Welcome everyone to this all-important clash between Jan Nepomniachtchi as he comes to the board, the candidates winner on the last two occasions. What a player he is, what a champion he is, and he takes on the first time ever candidate from India, Vidit Gujrathi. Nepo adjusts all his pieces. And this is a very interesting battle because Vidit had eliminated Nepomniachtchi in the World Cup, and you can see how Nepo is adjusting all his pieces here and getting ready for the battle. So for sure he has a score to settle here. There we have Vidit entering, and he generally has his time to himself, the meditation time. Perhaps he's already done it, or maybe we'll see. There he sits down, gets off his player card, and a handshake there. Whew, this is going to be exciting. Let's see what's the opening going to be. Ooh, there we have Vidit actually into his meditative pose. He hadn't done it, and this is something which has made everyone curious. As Vidit starts accomplishing one thing after another in the chess world, people are curious as to what he does before the game. Well, someday we will know, but it's just calming himself down, getting into the zone. The games are about to begin. The shake of hands, and off we go. What is Nepo's first move going to be? Generally, he prefers to open with 1 e4, and he does that. He plays his pawn to e4, and Vidit now has played e5 against Hikaru Nakamura and had a very good result there in the Berlin. Will he stick to that opening, or will he play something else? Now, after maybe a minute of closing his eyes, and this is perhaps less of meditation, maybe something like a prayer that he says before the game. Well, it's something that Vidit has never revealed outside to the world, but he plays e5. Now, e4, e5 on the board, which is the most solid opening. Jan plays knight f3, and it's not at all easy to beat Vidit with white pieces because he has such a solid repertoire. He goes knight c6, and it's always now interesting for me whether the bishop will go to c4 or b5, because I think these are the two moves which they have been sort of debating at the top level. This time Nepo goes for bishop b5. The Ruy Lopez, or the Spanish as they call, is on the board, and now Vidit plays his knight out to f6. This is the Berlin, and Berlin is one of the most solid openings out there. He castles very interestingly because d3 leads to anti-Berlin, which is what Hikaru played, but castles means that is Nepo ready to go into this famous Berlin Endgame. This endgame has a long history, but before that there's also the move rook e1, perhaps, which leads to a very symmetrical kind of structures. Is Nepo going to go for rook e1, or will he play d4, which then we are pretty sure will take it to the... Oh, he plays d4. We are going into the endgame. And why am I so excited? I'll tell you. Because this endgame, which we are going to witness, the Berlin endgame, was popularized by Vladimir Kramnik in his World Championship match with Kasparov with the black pieces. Kasparov, who's known as an aggressive and attacking player, could not break Kramnik's Berlin endgame. And we'll see this endgame. And since then, it has been growing in popularity so much to an extent that at some point, so many games at the top level was played through the Berlin endgame, and most of them ended in draws, which is when everyone started to say, oh my god, e4 has been refuted, or not refuted, but there's no way for white to play for an advantage. And this is the history of this opening. You can see how the pawn has come up ahead, and now after the knight moves, the queens are going to get traded. So let's first understand the Berlin endgame very quickly. After queen takes d8, which is what Nepo is going to very likely play, because that is why he's given up his bishop. You don't give up your bishops just like that. Queen takes queen, king takes queen. We reach this position where black has the bishop pair. White in return has a mobile pawn majority on the king side, while black's majority on the queen side is slightly mangled up. Knight comes out to c3, and this is what both sides are going to play for. White is going to try and mobilize his king side pawns. Black is trying to somehow use his bishop pair, at the same time stopping white from making that progress, and also promoting his queen side pawn. So what if it's doubled? It's still an extra pawn there. Vidit goes bishop d7, There are many ways to play here. Bishop d7 is one of the main lines. Nepo goes h3. Maybe somewhere he wants to go g4. And black now generally can put his king on e8, can put his king on c8. There are many ways to go about it. He goes h6 with it because he wants to plant his bishop on e6, but then knight g5 would hit the bishop, and so this h6 is a useful move to make. Nepo comes quickly and pushes the pawn to g4, so he's clearly well prepared. We are on move number 11. It's natural to see that the player is well prepared. And now after g4, Vidit brings his knight back to e7. And this knight is very flexible. It can jump to the d5 square, it can go to g6, and Nepo goes knight h2. The novelty of the game. It's the first ever time it's played, and look at how Nepo gets up from his board, leaving Vidit to figure out the details. Now Vidit has 154 as he begins to think, and after a very long thought which lasted for close to 36 minutes, he plays g5 because Nepo's idea, as we discussed, was to mobilize his kingside pawns. Vidit kind of stopped it with f4, but Nepo anyway plays f4, and he says to Vidit that I'm going to strike here. I'm playing f5, so you must take. So Vidit takes. And guys, now you will realize that what has happened is the h pawn has become slightly weak, right? And f7 pawn is also slightly weak. But that being said, the e5 pawn is also isolated. And Vidit now plays his bishop to e6. So he's telling Nepo, my bishop here. Guys, this is the heart of the position. This bishop on e6. It's a very solid bishop there. Nepo goes knight e4, and his intention is to kill this bishop with knight to c5. So knight g6 is an idea, knight d5 is an idea because you are able to control the c5 square. But Vidit keeps his flexibility of not moving the knight because he doesn't know where it will belong, covers this square, and also makes a square for the king on b7. Nepo now comes knight to f3, and he's going to d4 to kill this bishop. You see how the knights want to kill the heart of black's camp. But then c5, Vidit is like, no, I'm not letting your knight come anywhere close there. So game gets exciting. White has all the pieces developed. Black is kind of underdeveloped, but is fine. Knight comes to f6, and the knight is well placed there. Vidit moves his king here. We know that the king is going to be well placed on b7. Later he can start mobilizing his queenside pawns if needed. Nepo needs to somehow create his passer on the king side. How successful will he be? He goes king g2. You see both the players playing with their kings here. So king g2 played, and now Vidit, who's down to 1 hour 1 minute here, and Nepo, who has 1 hour 34 minutes. This is one of the strategies that Nepo has employed in the candidates. Play fast, and you will put your opponent under time pressure. King g3. So last 4 moves, 2 moves for white, 2 moves for black, both have been with the king. King comes up to g3, and now Vidit says it's time for my queenside pawns. He's not yet decided what to do with his pieces, but he's just happy. This is why Berlin is such a weird opening. The rules of, castling, developing your pieces, all of those go, they are thrown away. a4 played, fixing this, and maybe if he gets b5, b4, he would be very happy there. Nepo now brings his rook to the center of the board. So white is kind of reached his maximum potential, I would say, while black has not even got his pieces into the game. And Vidit now finally says, my knight did not belong to g6, did not belong to d5, it belongs to c6, where I can attack the pawn on e5. He goes c3, calmly pushing his pawn, and maybe now, and actually he controlled the d4 square maybe in future, bishop e7. So you can see with 2 moves, Vidit has got all his pieces now into the game, and Nepo needs to figure a way. He goes knight to h4. He wants to come to the f5 square, it seems to me. And Vidit can continue normally with his queenside play, but he finds an opportunity to play on the king side, h5. Because if you take here, I can go rook h5, gh5, and check, and you lose your knight. Wow, that was very alert from Vidit. It has forced Nepo to play g5, but now the f5 square, the g6 square, they all look very, very solid. So maybe bishop d8, bringing the knight here could be a great idea, but Vidit goes rook a5. What a move by Vidit. What a creative move, because he wants to put his rook on b5, putting pressure here, and maybe he can push his pawn to c4, putting pressure on e5. That is such an interesting moment. Nepo plays rook e1, defending his central pawn. And how is Vidit going to continue? This game is getting so exciting strategically. He goes rook b5. He's attacking the b2 pawn. And you can defend it with rook. Maybe not rook e2 because of bishop c4. You will lose material. So rook f2 maybe is necessary here. He goes bishop c1. He brings his bishop back to c1. Slightly passive. Can Vidit play c4? Attacking here. This might not be so simple because knight f3 there is h4. But he goes what? He plays rook b3. Oh, guys, I'm getting a little crazy here. The reason being, Vidit wanted to play b5, b4, but Nepo has pushed his pawn to g6. And he's now threatening g7 to make a queen. So Vidit chops it off. He takes on g6. Knight takes g6 will be taken, I believe, by Jan Nepomniachtchi. Yes, he's taken and he's attacking the rook on h8 and the bishop on e7. And now the rook needs to move. But also there is an intermezzo possible with h4. But Vidit goes rook d8. Maybe for Jan, the best idea is to just push his pawn to h4, keeping this position. He can also take the bishop here. He takes it. He takes the bishop. Vidit must recapture. Well, Vidit is actually thinking and contemplating if he should give a check first. No, he takes here on e7. He has 11 minutes on the clock. Jan has 56, and this is going to play a big role. Knight takes the pawn on h5. So white has won a pawn, but actually black can come in with a check and then win this pawn on h3, and that's what Vidit does. He gives a check, and the reason why I'm repeatedly telling you the time is because there's no increment. 10 minutes left for Vidit, 9 minutes in fact, and he has to now make 8 more moves after this. King takes f3, but it's nice for him that the last few moves have not been too tough. He takes the pawn on h3 and restores material balance. But this is the dream that white was aiming for. The kingside majority needed to be created into a passer, and that's what Nepo has done, and this rook is offside. It can only come into the game if Vidit gets b5, b4, and Vidit must do it, otherwise it's like playing a rook down in this position. You kind of have gone very ambitious and then you call off the plan. That's not going to work. So yes, Vidit goes b5. Will the two pieces be able to hold the e-pawn before b4 comes in? Before b4, a nice one. I don't know. Bishop g5 attacking the knight. The knight has to move. Where will it go? I think white's going to win a piece. But that being said, the b2 pawn is soft. So Vidit finds now knight d5, which is a good move. If you play e7, which most likely Nepo will do. Yes. Now if you take here, I can't win this because this position, maybe bishop c5, white is fine. So Vidit can't take this pawn right away. He needs to stop the pawn. And I think he needs his knight here, which is why he goes bishop d7. And now Nepo attacks this knight and the bishop here. So very important moment in the game. Maybe bishop c6 is a defensive idea. Bishop e8 with the idea of hitting the knight is one more. But he goes king c6. This is a small error here. Vidit has made a small mistake because now he is attacking b2. But Nepo finds a beautiful move attacking the knight. And good or bad, Vidit must take this. Take this and take here and hope to hold this to a draw, which is not going to be easy, but he must do it. He must take the pawn. He must sacrifice his knight for the pawn. He's thinking he has 4 minutes left just on the clock, which is a problem because he has to make 4 more moves and he blunders. The big blunder has come here, which is not a function of just the last few moves, but it has been the persistent pressure that Nepo has employed over a period of 3.5 hours. And with bishop e8, you can see there Nepo coming back, being surprised. He's like, what is this with it? Why did you do this? This is winning for me. Nepo always very, very expressive, and here he looks at his opponent, sees what is wrong, and you can understand the entire picture of what is happening by looking at the players' faces. Finally, Nepo has convinced himself that it was a blunder, and he takes here on d5. He's taken the knight, and now with it, if he takes here, maybe he can interpose with a check. He takes on h5. The main thing is, with it says, if you go rook d8, I'm taking on b2. If you queen, I'll take this. King takes, and then push b4. That's clear for him. 2 minutes left, has to make 2 more moves. But Nepo now finds this amazing move, and he says to Vidit, your rook is trapped, I am saving my pawn, my rook is coming here, and I will be a complete piece up. And there you see Nepo knows he's won the game. Check to the king here on, because this bishop was hanging, you had to move it. King comes to e5, maybe threatening here for Vidit, who is on the 40th move with last 1 minute left, needs to make this final move, but there's nothing left to be done. He needs to play b4, he needs to open this up. That's the only way he can create some counterplay. Yes, he does. And he should hope that if Nepo ever goes rook d8 and queen, he can sacrifice his bishop and then liquidate these pawns and go into rook versus rook and bishop, which is a draw. But the problem here, and the big issue, is that you are never going to be able to sacrifice this bishop for the pawn. Because Nepo plays king f6, looks at Vidit and says, my dear friend, you don't have this square, When you go here to e8, I will attack you. When you come out here, I will attack you. I have covered all the squares on this diagonal, and I will queen this pawn for free. And you can see there Vidit has now put his hands on his head. The realization that actually the bishop has no squares left on the diagonal is quite brutal. And it's also a very normal thing in chess that you get extra time, you get additional time, but when you get it, your position has already become lost. In some ways, it's like a little bit like life. Like you have your wealth and health. When you have your health, you don't have wealth. When you amass a fortune, your health goes for a toss, and that's exactly what has happened to Vidit. He's got his time, but his position has collapsed here. Bishop e8 goes back, but now Nepo can just jump in with rook to d8. Good move. Now the bishop, as we discussed, if it goes to h5, there is rook h8. Maybe Vidit has some last few tricks up his sleeve, which is to take on a3 and threaten to queen here with a2, a1. He takes on a3. And yeah, rook takes on e8. No, he's very smart. Nepo says, with it, I'm just taking this pawn on a3, and so that now you have no play. You cannot make a queen. Next move, I'm taking, moving the rook and queening. So with it plays bishop d7. An important moment, because if you take here and go here to make a queen, I can stop it with rook b8. So clearly Nepo shouldn't hurry. Yes, king f7 with the threat of taking and making a queen is the correct way to go about this. And it's very subtle here. Maybe just for you guys to understand, if you take rook c3 now, rook takes d7, threatening to queen. I cannot take back. Oh, he resigns, because check, I go king e6 and there's no more check here, and the pawn is queening. So with it, resigns there, and Jan Nepomniachtchi scores a win, and with it is trying to analyze. Let's hear if we can see what the players are analyzing.
95 I must be winning, but then okay, like 95 and if wow, it's a draw. But then maybe it's like a good chance, like practical, it's like 81. Yes. Okay, Jafar can play bishop d7. For a moment, bishop d7 first. So I have to play king bishop d7. If king h4, then you play king c6. Now king Jafar, bishop d7 check. Bishop d7 check. If king h4, then you go right here. King c6 maybe. Because king on h4 is not so well. Yeah. Yeah, go king g3, and knight b6. No, there is bishop on c6 now. No, bishop c6. King g3. Yes. Knight b6. Yes, it's here. Knight f6. Okay, rook takes b2. Yes, rook should check. And also play rook e2 sometimes. Rook e2. Okay, that's king e7. I feel like it's my only chance. I think it's true. Maybe still I have good chances because okay, sometimes trouble.